Hey, Freddy with CJ Pony Parts. If you've been following our Project F-150 EcoBoost, you've seen we've already done a few upgrades to unlock the potential of our truck. Today we're going to take it a giant leap forward by improving exhaust flow and reducing back pressure by installing this QKsple catted downpipe from CPE. This CPE QKsple downpipe features 3-inch mandrel bent stainless steel tubing to a 3.5-inch collector. It features an extra O2 sensor bung for a wideband sensor and high flow catalytic converters to keep the check engine light and the EPA happy. This downpipe will significantly improve power and turbo spool time, and today we're going to be installing it on our 2016 EcoBoost F-150. Tools you'll need for this installation: a lift and pole jacks, or a jack and jack stands, a 1/4-inch ratchet, 8mm socket, 3/8 ratchet, 13mm socket, a short and deep 15mm socket, 17mm socket, 18mm socket, 21mm socket, various extensions, a 10mm wrench, 15mm wrench, an oxygen sensor wrench, and you may need something to cut your exhaust, such as a sawzall and safety glasses. Now, the very first thing you're going to want to do before you even put the truck up in the air is take the engine cover off so you can get to the oxygen sensor for the driver's side and unplug it. You're going to want to get the wire out of its loop right here, so then you can drop the connector down and easily remove it. Now we're finishing the engine bay. We're going to put the truck up in the air and remove the belly pan. There's 4 8mm bolts securing this under tray on. And get the pan out of the way. This blue wire right here is the wire for the oxygen sensor on the passenger side. You have to disconnect that as well. The connector is up on top of the transmission. You have to pull the wire out of its hoop so you can pull it down, disconnect it, and there you go. The downstream oxygen sensor connector for the passenger side is up on top of the transmission as well, but a little bit further towards the rear. Yeah. Then you have to pull the wire out of its hoop as well. The driver's side downstream oxygen sensor connector is also on the rear of the transmission. Pull it out of its loop. The next thing we have to remove is the transmission crossmember right here, but before we do that, we're going to support the transmission using a pole jack and a block of wood. You don't need to jack up on the transmission, you just need to support it. So just put a little bit of tension on it. Just like that. With the transmission supported, you can remove the 4 13mm bolts on this plate right here. Oh wow, that has some weight. There's a heat shield on both sides of the crossmember, secured to the top of it with a 10mm bolt that we need to remove. We can now disconnect the downpipe from the catback. We're now going to drop this crossmember. We're first going to remove the 21mm nuts holding the crossmember to the transmission mount, and then we'll work on the side bolts. To drop the crossmember, it's secured in place with a 15mm bolt and an 18mm nut. Remove the 2 bolts on the other side of the cross member as well. The reason we drop the cross member is so the downpipe can actually come down. Before, if we try to remove the downpipe, it would hit the cross member and you wouldn't be able to remove it. But also, we need to remove these mounts on the downpipe as well. The driver's side of this transmission mount has 3 bolts to remove. 1 silver one, which we'll remove first, and then 2 black ones. Then you can get to these 2 bolts with an extension pretty easily. And then make sure you hold the mount for the last bolt so it doesn't fall down. With all the bolts removed, you can slide it off the downpipe. We can now disconnect the downpipe from the turbos. We have a bunch of wobble extensions right here to give us a nice arc to make removing the bolts on the turbos a little easier. We're going to go for the top nut first. And this is where the wobble extensions are really going to help. Probably don't need as many extensions for this one. On the passenger side, I'm actually going through the wheel well over the frame to get to the top bolt on this turbo. All right, with all the nuts off, you can remove the downpipe.
Got it?
Yeah. Now that we have the downpipe off the truck, we can transfer over the oxygen sensors to the CPE downpipe. It's very important that you don't mix these up. They need to stay on the same side and they need to stay on the front and rear. And we're going to apply some anti-seize to the threads just to make our life easier in the future if we have to remove it. It's very important that you don't get the anti-seize on the sensor. It can damage it. With the oxygen sensors in the downpipe, we're going to reinstall the transmission mount and then completely assemble the downpipe before putting it on the truck. Make sure you put the clamps on the Y pipe and then you can connect everything together. Just leave everything loose for now, and then we'll tighten it up once it's in the truck. You're probably going to need some assistance when putting this in the truck. You need to put it in as one unit. Reinstall the transmission mount bolts. Reinstall the hanger bracket on the transmission mount. You can now tighten up both flanges on the turbos. And we'll move on to the other side. Depending on which catback exhaust you have, you may need to trim the front pipe. As you can see in our case, our front pipe is just a little bit too long now because the CPE downpipe is a little bit longer than the factory downpipe, so we're going to need to trim about 2 inches off this front pipe. Install the provided hardware in the front pipe. You will need to use these bolts. The factory bolts don't have enough threads on them. And then tighten up all your clamps. Reconnect your oxygen sensors. Reinstall the transmission crossmember. Install the 2 nuts securing the transmission mount to the crossmember. Reinstall the bolt on top of each side of the crossmember, securing the heat shield to the crossmember. And tighten down the crossmember bolts. Reinstall this crossmember as well. And now that the crossmembers are firmly in place, we can lower the poles supporting the transmission. And reinstall the splash pan. Now we can move up to the top of the truck and reconnect the last oxygen sensor. Make sure you get the wire back in its hoop so it's nice and secure and doesn't melt on anything. Put the covers back on the engine. And your installation's finished. All right, let's see what it sounds like. Our CPE QKsple downpipe is installed. As expected, fit and finish is absolutely great. It should really help the turbo spool up a lot quicker. Installations take about 2 to 3 hours, and before you know it, you'll be heading down the road.